One, two, three, four. One, two, three, four. Together.
And welcome to another edition of the True Patriot Outfitters Podcast, Special Edition. Folks, we got a super cool one tonight. We're going to talk about a topic that's been buzzing around out there in the fishing industry, and it's kind of getting brushed under the rug here and there because it's a rough topic. And what that topic is rules violations by anglers, knowingly, unknowingly. We're going to talk a little bit about this on the boat side. We're going to talk a little bit on the kayak side and just talk about the industry as a whole. To do this, we've got a special guest with us here, one of the smartest guys that I am honored to know. And he is a consummate pro, in my personal opinion. He's been around the league. He fishes from bass boats. He fishes from kayaks. The guy has made a name for himself out there as a straight hook. Mr. Joshua Diehl, he's in the green room waiting on us to bring him in here. Before we do that, I want to go ahead and get the bills paid real quick. This episode of the podcast being brought to you by Amped Outdoors. Lithium batteries. If you're looking for quality lithium, fast charge, long life, and durability piece at a great price by a company that stands behind the products, Amped Outdoors. Check them out. The other sponsor for tonight is, of course, Eagle Claw. And I just rolled that on a wrong type of little ticker tape here. Laser sharp trocar hooks. I trust in them as far as terminal tackle goes, man. It is to me, it's the end-all, be-all. If American-made means something to you, these things are designed, they're poured, they're shaped, they're sharpened right here in the United States. Have been since like before dirt was invented. Eagle Claw, check them out for all of your terminal tackle needs. So there are the bills being paid. Let's go ahead and bring the man in now, Mr. Diehl himself. Josh, how the heck are you, brother?
What's going on, buddy? I'm doing pretty good.
You know, dude, you put a post out a little while ago in regards to this topic, and it got my brain, my juices flowing in there, and you were spot on, man. And that is, we're talking rules violations in tournaments, and you had made mention that it just feels like we're seeing more and more of it. Now, you know, could that be a product that because of the social media age, we see it more times than not? Maybe. But regardless, it's taken place, and it's a black eye on our sport. You know, no matter how you want to cut it. So, dude, that's what this whole thing is about. We wanted to talk in this, so let's get it rolling here. Let's talk with what we're talking about. Rules violation. What spurred that post for you? I guess first and foremost, what was kind of the tipping point?
So the tipping point for me was Sheffield getting disqualified from MLF. You have a professional on a pro tour who's violating the rules, and the MLF did an investigation. There was some noise about it, but there wasn't a lot of noise about it. And it looked like MLF was performing a thorough investigation, and then a post was finally made that, hey, there were some rule violations committed. They disqualified one individual, and that's kind of where it stopped. But there had been some noise through some of the fishing channels that there had been potentially more occurrences of that.
Yep.
They were on a smallmouth fishery at the time, and they were catching fishery. And, there was discussion about guys catching the same smallmouth over and over and over again, which biologically those smallmouth are very defensive and very protective of their beds, and so they'll eat numerous times, which is not similar to largemouth behavior. And then in addition to that, not turning around and showing the camera that the hook was in the mouth after they had caught a fish.
Yep.
And I think that at the end of the day is kind of one of the bigger components. I mean, obviously, when it comes to snagging or foul hooking fish, there's an honor code that comes with that, right? And the majority of boats don't seem to have a camera in the boat, right? And
Right.
so when you foul hook or snag a fish that you're sight fishing for, it's between you, your morals, and whatever else you consider, God and above, whatever, that you fall back on and say, look, I'm either going to keep this fish or I'm not. Okay, and I've
Yeah.
watched some pro footage from somebody like Gerald Swindle. Like, this totally sucks. I just caught this fish outside the mouth. I was sight fishing for it, and I have to put it back.
Yep.
To me, that's the moral high road, and more people need to take the moral high road there. That's what I want to see, right? But we've had a little bit of a plague, and you made mention when we opened the broadcast about is this something that we've seen more lately due to social media? And I'm going to tell you the answer to that question is no, because I've been pretty thick in the social media on the fishing realm since at least 2019, 2020 windows. And in the last 12 to 16 months is when we've really seen an uptick. It started with the walleye cheaters, the guys putting the lead weights in the fish. Then Bass University did a special sequence. And in that conversation, they were talking about gray areas. And in that, they gave examples of like people moving brush piles or people seeding brush piles with live baits as a way to draw fish to certain places. And then we had the incident on Lake Eufaula where somebody was spot sitting. And then there's the video that was running around social media about the gentleman who was yelling at the guy in the boat for fishing on a spot on Lake Eufaula. And there's just more and more of that coming to the surface. And like, look, there's rules violations taking place at the local level, at the regional level, at the national level. And like at some point in time, like the industry's got to figure out how to get this together. And, it doesn't take, from a social media standpoint, it only takes one black eye for one person to potentially stain their name in the entire business.
Sure.
And, I'm hoping that on these national circuits, they're going to force, even if it's just a GoPro, they're going to force a camera in every boat.
It was my understanding, too, on the Sheffield situation is that there was an MLF official in the boat with him. And what the violation piece rolled down to was the getting the fish, and before bringing the fish over the gunnel, was getting the hook out of its mouth and blocking the view of the official from being able to see that. And of course my mind goes right to if I'm the official in the boat, I'm like, no, that fish is not recorded because you've got to let me see this, type thing. But obviously we'll get to later why I think that is harder and harder for officials. I have been an official, a marshal at one of the super tournaments. And yeah, man, there's a starstruck, factor when you're sitting in the boat with a guy that's been fishing, doing this for 25, 30 years. He's a legend. I had a situation, I'll be first and foremost to tell you this, and Mike McClellan, I love him McStick to death. We're in La Crosse. He pitches in with his secret weapon little jig. He's throwing into some logs. He gets snagged up. He asks me whether or not he can stay snagged up and throw another, in because he knows there's a fish in there. And I got to tell you, man, I swallowed my own teeth when I had to tell him, no, Mike, I'm sorry. This was actually a topic that was just brought up. Only one line can be in the water at a time. And he's like, you sure 100%? I'm like, I'm very positive, but while you're here, I will call this real quick. So I call tournament director within, a few minutes. I get the answer. Yes, I'm correct. That is the rule. And so we were out of it, but yeah, it's a tricky situation. But I think what we're talking about there, the example that I just gave are two different things, and see what you think about this. Cause we can, look at another recent one, Keith Pochet, pushing the rules. Knowingly, with malice or intent, don't think so. Think he's pushing the rules, trying to bend it, trying to see how far he can go with it. Jeff Sprague last year, got information from a non-competitor about a certain body of water prior, owned up to it, took the DQ and stepped out of it. You can go back to, situations like 05, 06, Kevin Van Dam. Bass had instituted a brand new rule where the co-anglers could not operate the boats in that pro-am style they had back then. And during practice, Van Dam's up on the front of the boat. He's looking for beds, and he's got his operating the boat. He didn't realize that act during practice was a violation of the rules, but it was. He admitted to it. And bang, he got DQ'd for that event, so even the GOAT himself. But in the Sheffield situation, there were like five, like you said, there were like 5, 6 other anglers that all had to undergo lie detector tests.
Okay.
Sheffield failed his when asked and posed with the certain questions. From what I read online, mind you, this could be scuttlebutt, is that the other anglers passed. They're
As well is that the other anglers passed. Now I'll tell you
yeah,
this: like I've been subjected to my fair share of polygraphs for non-fishing reasons, and in my time of being subjected to polygraphs, there's a science behind it, but there's also an inaccuracy behind it as well. So, in defense of the polygraph, like for people who very clearly have a signature when they lie, it's super easy to see. Okay. But there's also a series of individuals that there's a result that's called inconclusive. And
right.
inconclusive is not a failure. Inconclusive means that they've looked at your results and they can't determine whether or not you're lying. Okay. And then there's pass, everything just reads clean. And so, depending on your biometrics, depending on your stress level, depending on your reactions, depending on your behaviors, you can make the polygraph do a number of things.
Right.
And like for those that haven't been on a polygraph before, the polygraphs come in different formats too. They have ones with cables, they have ones with foot pads, they have ones with butt pads, they have ones with you have attachments on your fingers. And so there's different ways that they record your biometrics when a polygraph is conducted.
Right.
And I've yet to have to take one in the fishing industry, but I already know what I'm getting into when I take one in the fishing industry because I've had polygraphs in my life.
Sure.
Part of a different part of my life. And so, when I go back to the Sheffield situation and the marshal, as a marshal, I'm expecting noble intent. If the guy comes up and there's the chance that the hook falls out as he's grabbing the fish. I've seen it happen before. But then there's also like the intentional, like, was he intentionally trying to hide or disguise it? Was he, working the gray area? Like, what was truly happening there? I've been told, and I haven't gone back and reviewed all the footage. I've been told if you go back and watch the MLF footage from that event, you can see some of the questionable behavior. I will say this. If the rule states that you must show that a sight fished fish must be shown to the camera or the official, then that's the rule.
Yep.
It's black and white.
Right? Agreed.
In the case of what we determined to be gray areas, look, Keith Poche just recently, and I don't know if you know this, just recently DQ'd himself from the Opens event that's coming up because he had a different event that he had to fish on the same waters, and he elected to fish the other event and intentionally took himself out of this event.
Yeah.
To me, that speaks volumes for Poche because, look, I understand Poche's pushed the gray areas. Like if he can do things within that operational constraint and restriction, yes, interpretation of a rule matters. But in his defense, if he feels like he was obeying the rule, that's one piece. In Bass's defense, and we've been briefed on this number of times, if you have a question, you need to ask.
Exactly.
That, to me, right there, that's the only thing that hurts Poche, is if he was in doubt in any way, shape, or form, or thought that there was anything squirrely about his access to that retention pond of sorts, for lack of a better word, then he should have talked to Bass officials and said, hey, I'm trying to access this extra body of water. I can do it without leaving my boat. I can do it using the equipment that's set up by the lake. It's considered a part, and here's my facts behind it. Yep. And then giving them an opportunity to make a ruling before he ever ended up there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a simple judgment call in the fact is, could this be considered gray? If it is a gray area, man, then yeah, you got to get it in front of the tournament director and let them go through their due process and do what they do. And whether you like their ruling or not prior, at least you know what the ruling is and you can move on from there.
The downside of gray area is that if you don't take the gray area to them in advance and it gets brought up that you are thought to have committed a rules violation and they rule against you afterwards, you have no backing whatsoever.
Agreed.
But if you took it to the tournament director on this date, on this time, before the tournament kicked off and said, hey, this is a gray area, is this legal? And the TD said, green light, go, there's nothing they can do about it.
Agreed. And it does take that moral compass. It takes an integrity piece, in my personal opinion. It falls to that integrity and honor. To me, what is so important to me, especially on the kayak side, because all we've been talking about to this point is the boat side. The kayak side, we're still so new and scratching for our name. We know it's the fastest growing sector of the sport fishing industry in kayak fishing. We know that. But at the same time, like we were talking off air, the kayak fishing anglers at the highest level are looking for that credibility piece to be considered that level. So we've got to maintain an integrity of the series that we have out there to show that this is a fair, even, and balanced field that anybody, boat or kayaker, enters into and is treated the same way. And it becomes very, very important, on that side. And like I just alluded to, we've been talking on the boat side primarily here, because that is, the biggest part of our industry right now. It has been, and it's still, that's where the biggest money's at. That's where the biggest careers, if there are careers left, that's where it's at. That sort of thing is there. But let's talk, for a moment on the kayak side. We've seen a couple guys, that are reputation driven, to push limits, here and there. We've seen a few of those things as we're working through. What on the kayak side have you seen that that's raised bells and whistles for you?
So the biggest threat in the kayak community right now, it comes back to the moral code. It comes back to the personal integrity component. And the reason why I say that is multiple-fold. In the kayaks, first, you are the farthest removed from society and the community when you fish in tournament events. Okay, the kayaks do not have 30 boats following them around on the lake or on the river, verifying or watching them do right or wrong thing. In addition to that, like when you catch a fish, you're the only one, even if you record it, because nobody's asking you for your recordings. You're the only one that knows how that fish was caught, where that fish was caught, what situation that fish was in when you caught it, the whole kit and caboodle there. And right now, the biggest threat that we've seen in the kayak industry is fish resubmission and fish mutilation. Those are the two biggest things that seem to keep coming up. We had an issue here in the state of Georgia with somebody measuring dead fish, intentionally measuring dead fish. And then that person has since been disqualified, removed from all tournaments, and turned into DNR. But in addition, South Carolina recently had an incident where a gentleman was mutilating fish. He was altering the fish, keeping them on stringers, and then cutting their tails and trimming their fins to make them look like different fish. And then, there's also the historical reference, because the fish mutilation has been a problem in the kayaks for quite a while. But that goes back to one of the originals, where the guy was cutting the tail off and using it as an extension to make his fish seem longer, which resulted in what ended up being the rule about no touching of the tail.
Yep.
Now, touching and holding of the tail has come back, of course, but the rule on that has been modified a little bit to make that much more difficult, in my opinion, for somebody to do.
Right.
But again, it all comes back to moral code. And sooner or later, this is a situation that's got to work itself out. And I think on these big national level circuits, whether you're in a kayak or a bass, but to come back to my original position is that I think that the tournament trails are going to have to require, potentially even provide, a full-time camera that sits on the boat.
Yeah. Yep.
And it can be as simple as a GoPro with an HD card, with a large SD card on it, and a battery extender. And it basically sits on there, and they collect them at the end of the event and request the footage. It could be as simple as that. I don't know if we're ready for that yet. There's lots of problems in that process. But
GoPro overheating.
Yeah, from GoPro overheating to batteries running out to malfunctions to running into something and breaking it or knocking it over.
Yeah.
The footage not being clean, it being submersed. There's a lot of possible issues there, but I think it's a deterrent is really what it is.
Yeah.
Is that, there's a chance, regardless, that you get caught on camera And then they could sense with folks that have these continuous problems over and over and over and over again that there might be something a little more squirrely going on with a specific individual.
Right.
If you always seem to come back and your camera never has any footage, there's probably something going on.
Sure. And it's one of the things, one of the rules that I absolutely love, and I don't want to jump ahead too far here, but one of the rules that I absolutely love, and this transcends across bass boat and kayak, and that is the rule section inside of our tournament rules that dictates that we as competitors must report a violation if we see it. It puts that heat on everybody to self-police out there. But like you said, there are the situations where people are off on their own, but it's, depending on the bodies of water out there, a lot of times, there's at least possibly another kayaker in the area. And that self, determining factor there of, yo, man, you're not more important to me. Our buddy relationship or whatever is not going to trump, I'm not going to have myself DQ'd because I am watching you do a rules violation and I don't want to be a snitch or whatever. It's like, nah, dog, let's get this handled, proper. Let's make sure we got it right and move on.
I'm not going to dime anybody out here because I don't want to be in that business here in this podcast, but I can assure you that is not happening with consistency. I've heard enough discussions and enough stories post events where like, yeah, I probably should have reported this, or yeah, that was a violation and I didn't push it forward. And, well, it didn't impact me, so I let it go. And that's not the point at the end of the day. The point of the rule is to protect the field in its entirety and to protect the integrity of the game.
Correct.
Okay? And everybody has a responsibility to protecting the integrity of the game. If you're not willing to protect the integrity of the game, I got to ask if you're having your own integrity in the game itself.
Agreed. I couldn't agree 100%. If that's not a priority to you, then yeah, I'm not sure you should be fishing at that high level. That's because it causes a problem for all of us.
And that's a challenge space, right? Because it's an uncomfortable situation.
Sure.
And it comes down to there's egos involved with personalities, there's conflict with sponsors involved. Like there's huge domino effects that come with all of this. Like when a bass boater who has hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sponsorships makes a mistake and intentionally commits a violation, there's huge fallouts from that.
Yep.
When somebody breaks a rule unintentionally, and let's go back to the kayaks for a second. You don't wear your life jacket for a day. You admit, you make a phone call, you get DQ'd from that event, and everybody's like, look, hey, you did the honest thing, you self-reported, and you took care of it. First off, kudos to you. Thank you for having integrity for the game. You made a mistake. Rule infractions are going to happen. It is just, that's part of, so as long as the rules are different between all circuits, which they are, okay, and as long as the rules are different from all different fishing platforms, which they are, okay, there are always going to be unintentional rule violations. Unintentional rule violations are not cheating. Intentional rule violations, that's a different game.
Agreed.
And that's where the separation has to be drawn. It's like, look, you need to understand that you are free to come to the table and say, look, this is an unintentional violation. This happened. I saw this happen, and let the process work itself out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's the importance of having a governing body, that can overlook this. Not just a tournament director alone. The TD can get a hold of several other people, bring the situation to quickly, and get it figured out as far as what the situation. I'm going to throw a couple things at you because I have we've talked about what's going on. We talked about a lot of the players, some of the names, the big names that's been into this, and so I'd like to get into the why of this right now. I have a two-pronged situation theory as to what is causing this to be at a higher level right now than what we've seen in the past. Specifically, we'll talk on the boat side, but this also translates and transcends, if you will, across into even kayak, and that is this. It is my opinion that right now, more than ever in our industry, money is one of the biggest driving factors. Now, I know that sounds like the low-hanging fruit, but hear me out on this. The money situation of what you see today for angling, competitive angling, has never been this stringent. It's never been as high as where it's at right now. The cost to compete is higher today than it ever has been. Boats cost more than they ever have. The average price on fishing tackle continues to go through the roof. Sponsorship dollars are fewer and far between now than where it used to be. We don't need to grind down into, social media is causing that, all these other, whatever the case is. The fact of the matter is there isn't as much sponsor dollar running around out there that there used to be. So this money factor for anglers is now more going out than what opportunity exists out there. And that's the second prong to this. Less opportunity for anglers to fish at the higher levels. The way these two combine, you look at what the rule change Bass made. 9 open events you have to commit to even have a consideration and a look to make it to the Elite Series. 9 of those on that open series. And these are at $2,000 damn near a pop, to get in. That's just to have a shot at the pro field. MLF decided in their infinite wisdom in this case, and I've been a huge proponent of the MLF. I actually like what the organization stood for and what they were trying to do for our sport. But this one had me just scratching my head. They now have 2 farm clubs. There was talk that the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit was a glorified pro circuit, was nothing more than a farm club, if you will. It was trying to make it to their big level, which is the Bass Pro Tour. Instead of fighting that or adjusting or doing, they just embraced it and said, yep, here you go. But there's still $5,000 an entry fee to get into these things. And that's still not the highest level. So no matter where you turn, there's just less and less opportunity for anglers on the whole. The kayak side of the game, as we stated before, we're trying to make a name for ourselves out there. Right now, our entire field, even at the highest level, those who consider themselves some of the best kayakers in the world, literally is still pay to play, man. That's all it is. Anybody can go fish against them. It's literally, there is no qualification series yet. There's nothing, we have a championship event. We have this, we have that you got to qualify to get in, but the series themselves are all pay to play. So that continues to, stack on there. So anglers, I think, it's this perfect pressure cooker that is just forcing more and more, and all it's going to take is put a couple people that are a little weak-willed, weak in the moral department, the greed gets the best of them, and I think that pressure cooker just cracks them, and it's forcing more and more people into that. I know that's a mouthful that I just threw out there, but that's where I feel that we're seeing a lot more of this coming. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think you hit on some of my thoughts, but I don't think we're aligned here. I think that one of the biggest factors in this game right now is pressure to perform. It's not so much a money component as much as it is the look, the feel, the recognition, the outputs in some context. Social media has taken a big part of the fishing industry, and winners get recognized. Winners find themselves on Bassmaster.com. They find themselves on MLF.com. They find themselves earning and making sponsorships. And then as those sponsorships start to come in, there's pressure to perform, whether it's true or false. Okay, there's perceived pressure to perform to justify those sponsors.
Right.
And there's actually a separation there. Is that most sponsors could give a tail end less whether or not you actually perform. They care that you continue to manage your commitments, represent the sport well, represent with integrity, and continue to deliver on your contractual agreements with them. If you maintain that, usually they're green light, good to go. It doesn't matter if you finish last or if you finish first.
Sure.
However, on the flip of that, there's this component where, one of my mentors in the kayak fishing world used to say, look, you need to not feel pressure from your sponsors. They don't care. And he's absolutely right. It's always been that way. All pressure that I've always put on myself is a product of myself. I've never had 5x3. I've never had boondocks. I've never had anybody pick up the phone and go, look, you did terrible today. We're cutting you from the team.
Right.
I've never done that. But there's that in the head pressure moment of like, look, if I'm not at the top, then I'm not fulfilling my commitments. And that's not the way that that works out. But I do think that that's a huge staple in some of the problems that we have. There's going to always be the greedy people that are, it's just all about the money. Okay. There's always going to be individuals that are, it's all about winning, nothing more than winning. And that's okay, right? Look, I don't care if it's about the money. I don't care if it's about just winning. I don't care. Look, everybody's got a different reason for coming out and playing the game. But if coming out and playing the game involves you breaking rules to be successful, there's not a place for you.
Agreed.
And
100% agree. And I did mean that in that less opportunity, while money is the main, one of my main opinions on this, the less opportunity I think speaks to that performance drive is kind of where I was going with that, is that there's just not as many avenues available. You've made a solid point here too, that I think also that to play on top of that, when you said that pressure, that self-imposed pressure, I think there becomes this, what do the other anglers, what do the other competitors think of me? I've got this great sponsorship. And just like you said, there's this, do I deserve it? I don't want them talking behind, that I don't deserve to be a part of this. So I got to perform. I got to do this. I think a lot of that plays in there as well, is that whole ego piece that jumps on them.
There's individuals in the sport that have been seen as icons, whether that's in the kayaks or whether that's in the bass boats. And those icons have an image and a reputation and an expectation to kind of do their thing on a semi-regular basis. So that brings its own pressure, right?
Yep.
But again, we have to go back. A lot of those individuals are very, very honest people, and that they are doing what's right for the sport day in, day out, regardless of the outcomes.
Agreed.
They finish 80th place, they finish in 5th. It happens when you see that ebb and flow. And sometimes they get on heaters and they make runs or do things that are a little bit special that just make them more successful than the rest of the field for a time being. And then the field balances itself out and you watch them recede back out of the light. And that's the nature of the game. Typically, an individual doesn't win numerous events consecutively on a regular basis. The fields are too good. The competition's too good. However, it does happen. Heaters happen. It's very rare for an Elite Series pro to win 2 events in the same season, but it's happened, and it's happened a couple of times recently in the last few years. But, when's the last time you saw somebody win 3?
Right.
It's been a long time.
I think Dustin Connell did it 2 years ago or last season maybe. It was celebrated as damn near a championship. The fact that he could win 3 of them, that was like unheard of.
Right. It is unheard of, and that's where some of that separation comes in. And like, you're going to find that sticks at your local and your state levels, they're going to win events and be in the top 5 and 10 almost consistently. When you bring them to the regional level, they're going to go down a notch. They're going to still have their top finishes, but they're going to have a scattered bad day or a scattered bad weekend, and they're not going to always be at the very tip top of the field.
Right.
And then you're going to have the national progression, which is going to have even more taper off. And what's happening is that as you go through those progressions, the competition is just getting that much better. And so there's a separation between consistency and a separation between winning all the time. And some people are gifted, man. Like, there are some people that they can do nothing wrong on the water, and they really are a class act. But then there's some others that you just, it's like, hey, the league has to look into things and say, is this legit? Was this happening right? Was there something done differently? And then give them the opportunity to do the right thing and to go through the due process.
Agreed.
As anglers and athletes in this process, we have to trust that the process works. Okay. And I trust that the process works. We've done everything in our power from a sport community to try to make sure that this process is as foolproof as it possibly can be. Does that mean that there's not room for improvement? There's always room for improvement. but we've done everything in our power to make this as solid as possible. And somebody has to want to break the rules to really make a violation to cause problems.
Right. And that brings me to the closing piece on this is where do we go, at this point? Is it continue to self-police? Is it to bring this topic up and continue to talk about it with the competitors out there? Like we spoke about this earlier, is that we know for a fact that the self-policing is not taking place out there because as competitors, we've seen it in situations. So do we need to bring this to the series and to the tournament directors to make a point to say, listen, you guys need to be doing this and understand that there's no pressure on you. If you're not sure, don't say a word, just call, the director directly and we'll keep you anonymous 100%, on this. Or what do you think moving forward? What's the best way that let's talk specifically the kayak game. How do we maintain that integrity, and keep that moving?
If I go back and read the kayak rules for the circuits that I fish, the kayak rules state that or at least they did state on the one circuit, that if I was to submit a protest, the person who was protested against gets to know who put in the protest. It is not done anonymously.
Right.
Okay. Now, I have not had to protest anybody's results. Okay. Have I self-policed and turned somebody in and said, hey, look, this is a rules violation. TD, please reach out to them and have a conversation with them to get them back on track? Absolutely.
Yep.
Because self-policing never stops in the game. Okay. It's just the way it is. Now, it's a tough situation being the TD because one of the questions that's going to come back is like, what's your proof? What's your evidence? If another angler is violating the communication rules, you're probably not going to necessarily have them on video camera violating. You're going to overhear them talking to somebody, and you're probably not in eyesight. They probably don't know you're there.
Right.
So that's going to be a situation of like he said versus she said, and that's a hard spot for a tournament director to be in. I think that self-policing will have to continue, okay? And individuals will have to continue to turn in, hey, these incidents happened on the water. We are requesting that the TDs look into these issues. I think that the trails have to continue to find ways to creatively tweak and format or tweak and monitor some of these situations. I can tell you in fishing BASS for the last 4 years, I've never had a random boat inspection. Okay. Should I have a random boat inspection in 4 years? Look, is it a pain in the butt? Absolutely, but I should have one.
Yeah, agreed. The rules are only as good if you enforce them.
That's correct. And is that more work on the tournament director and on the league? Absolutely. But those are actions that protect the integrity of the sport.
Right.
And so BASS on the opens level, on the national level, on the elite level, what do? They check live wells every morning. You can't do that with kayaks because the kayaks scatter.
Agreed.
Right? You're not all launching from the same place. But when the bass boats come through, the bass boats all get live well checks. They all get life vest checks. They all get
kill switch.
So, yeah, exactly. And so that's the separation that the kayak community has to work on a little bit. It's like, how do we police that better? And I don't have all the answers there because this is a difficult problem to solve. But the closest thing that can be done there is the video component. There's been a thought running through my head with all of the stuff that I've seen in the league and the accusations. Some of the accusations are true. Some of the accusations are false. But like having that permanent camera on my boat 24/7, just for my own protection, so that nobody can ever come back and say, hey, you did this wrong.
Right.
Or you intentionally did this wrong. Because that's the part that's bad.
Yeah, that's the key piece is the intentional as opposed to the rules infraction. The rules, like you said, the rules infraction are going to continue to occur. Intentional cheating, and trying to, create subterfuge through, a situation, that's the piece that really damages, that we have to find ways to clean that up. and
I've had some
continue.
conversation with some folks about cameras and camera options. Um, I've struggled with maintaining and managing camera footage for myself just to put stuff on YouTube to show people what I'm
Yeah.
doing or how I'm engaged or how I'm studying or how I'm breaking down a fishery. But to be honest with you, I'm going to have to, I think personally that you're going to see within the next probably 6 to 12 months, you're going to see a camera mounted to the nose of my kayak that's purely there as no other reason, just to prove that I'm doing everything legit. Because, success breeds apprehension, you know, and I'm not going to call anybody out, but like people have been accused of cheating or for breaking the rules because they've been successful. When
Yeah.
the truth is, at the end of the day, they're just exceptional anglers.
Yeah.
Um, and they exist in the world, they exist in the community, and they kick my teeth in on a regular basis. Other ways to try and compete better and be more effective on the water. But the fact is that, like, you go out and you win an event and you come back and do it again and have another top 5 finish and then have this and that and that. And it starts to build this momentum. Momentum is real even in the fishing community. But
I think
it's
yeah, I think it's a major player in our industry is that when you get that momentum shield when it gets on board, man, it comes with you. But the funny thing is that a lot of times you don't see it translate to the next season. Like you said, all of a sudden it's flying back out of, or just slightly fading out of the limelight again. And there's still solid performances, but nothing like, those top threes that you see consistently, producing like that. But yeah, for sure.
I think if you put a camera on every situation that has been reported for on the water live in tournament violations, none of them would have happened. Okay. And so somebody will go, well, what about the Sheffield situation? And the Sheffield situation, I think that there was enough video evidence to suggest that a rules violation had occurred. And for them to say, look, you did this and this was against the rules and this is why. Okay. Incidental things happen. You had a fish come up to the bow, to the rail of the boat, and you went to lip it and the hook fell out. And that happened once. But that happened 5 times today. That's the difference.
Yep.
And video has it on capture and goes, look, this happened 5 times. That's not the way. We all know that that's not how this works. You just don't, every fish you pick up just doesn't come out of the hook fall out.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so that fixes the fish mutilation problem. That fixes the measuring dead fish problem. That fixes, and a lot of these guys will just refuse to take a polygraph, which at that point in time, if you refuse to take a polygraph on any circuit, you're done.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, in the boat world, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, that are on the line.
Kayak too.
And careers. And in the kayak industry, we're not too far from that. You know what I mean? I mean, our tournament rigs are every bit of $15,000 to $20,000 of equipment loaded in these things.
Yep.
And that's pretty, considering what we're dealing with, where most people think kayak and what they're thinking of is what they pick up at Walmart, type thing. It's like, no, these are specialized, pieces of equipment that are meant to go out there and perform certain acts. And yeah, man, it comes with a lot of price tag to that. So, not to mention the biggest, like for a guy like me that travels so far to get to competitive waters, dude, it's the cost that it takes for me to compete, to be able to travel to these locations and commit to, being on scene with this kind of stuff, that, yeah, I want to know that when I get there, we got an even level playing field, that we're all doing the same thing for the same purpose. Thankfully, to this point, I feel as if, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just, living in a pipe dream, but I feel as if I have been at this point. Everywhere I go, I feel that, I've not felt like there's been anything, shady. There was a question about a situation, at Pickwick last year, but that got resolved. It wouldn't have mattered to me either way, just because I was dealing with, I fish against myself, and that's about it. But, yeah, so it's, I think you're right 100%. And I am going to look into that. My biggest struggle on the video thing, man, is I've got a GoPro. My wife bought me like a Hero 8. I've got even one of those silly YOLO sticks with the extended power. I got a battery pack. The thing's sitting right back behind me here. And it still shuts off an hour and a half into it, even with no case on it, sitting wide open, because it just overheats. And I'm like, $300-$400 for a stinking camera. Could you guys figure this out? You're on the 8th edition, and I know I'm not alone on this because I researched it. Yo, GoPro, get your head out of your booty and figure this out. Can we make it not overheat? Is that a possibility?
I'm going to be honest. I have a Hero 5, and I've never had a problem with my GoPro overheating.
Oh, my gosh. Mine just shuts off. Hour and a half in, bloop, turns off.
Now, the batteries only last 2 hours.
I've got the extended battery extra life that will literally, I had it sit at my desk and ran at my desk for 8.5 hours.
And so here's what I do. I have a 20,000 milliamp brick that I keep on my kayak, and I plug my GoPro into that 20,000 milliamp brick, and it will run for 24 hours.
Yeah, I would love if I could get mine to do that.
But as far as it shutting off, I think I can only account for one situation in the last 2 years worth of filming that I've done where it's actually shut off.
I put mine in one of those waterproof cases, and it immediately steams up in there because it's so freaking hot on the inside of it. And then you can't see out because it's just this fog screen, the whole time. Yeah, I got to figure out something for that, because I agree with you. I would love to see, just keep a camera on the front of the kayak up by my motor. Nice little shot there that just shows everything that I'm doing for the day. Yeah.
And it's only there for video record for my protection. In the
Totally.
event somebody says, "Hey, this is fishing," and the tournament director goes, "Look, I need to investigate. Here's all my footage." Got at it.
Agreed.
Don't mind me using the bathroom a few times a day.
I'll keep the camera pointed down.
But that's the pure truth. So
yeah, no, I agree, and that could be easy enough. I mean, with enough backing, for a high level series, with enough backing and standby support for a possible primary sponsor, that could be an easy deal to piece together. Or, hey man, you want to compete, you got to have a catch board. You want to compete, you got to have a video recorder on the front of your boat.
I'm really surprised that GoPro or YOLO Tech has not stepped up and become a primary sponsor to help with this situation.
Yep.
For as many people run GoPros already in the business, I'm surprised GoPro hasn't stepped up to become a major sponsor and help with rules management.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, I don't think it's being brought up enough just yet. I think there's still a lot of toe dipping, trying to figure out whether or not, our side of the industry is going to go in the place that I think we all know it's going. It's just taking time, and you got your national players that got to get thinned down a little bit, and then there's got to be some. Once we have a voice as a whole, I think that changes the game. Right now, there's a lot of voices at the table, and so
I think it takes a major event
yeah.
to really hurt the system. I've never been to an event in my 4 years where I felt like it has been compromised.
Right.
And the thing is that the one event that I was at that was truly compromised, they caught it.
Yep.
And I had no clue. I would not have known unless something had tipped the TD off to look into it.
Agreed.
So,
yeah. Awesome. Well, listen, man, I mean, you and I, both of us, I mean, we have, both of us have a lot invested in our sport, a lot of time and energy. We think, we have different ideas on certain areas, but at the same time, I think you and I both, just want to see the sport that we love so much be available for generations and generations. And, there's still a lot of unfinished business out there, to go square away. So hopefully we see Bass, we see Hobie, we see the All-American, we see KBF, we see everybody out there talking about this stuff and keeping it at the forefront, and more tournament directors being willing to, and who knows, maybe that anonymity piece where, for the self-policing piece, keep that between the tournament director. I mean, it doesn't really, I don't think it really matters unless you're talking a he said, she said situation, but at some point there can be a breaking level, and that's what you have directors and governing bodies for. They can figure that out.
That's right.
That's their headache. So.
Yep.
Listen, brother, thank you so much for stopping by, man. This is a cool deal. I love talking fishing with you always. I love fishing with you out there. Hopefully, coming up here soon, we get a chance. I'm not sure what the events are looking like right now, but you and I are going to get a chance to fish against each other and at least in the same neck of the woods again. That would be nice. We'll see what next season. What's the end of your season looking like here right now, man, to close things out?
So I'm having to make some hard life choices this year. Things have been a little bit rough. I think that I'm going to go all in on Sam Rayburn and fish the last Hobie event this year and try and earn my top qualification slot.
Nice.
I think that's the thing that I have to do. For me, it's a matter of one, making entry into the top because you have to fish 4 events, and 2, earning that qualification by having that. I would love to go back to lacrosse. I can't justify after my last performance at lacrosse for BASS to go back there. And with money and leave situations being tight on this end, it's hard for me. Like, I need to put my eggs in the appropriate basket. And so that's what I'm doing. And I think that I'm all in to Sam Rayburn. I'm putting all my concentration on and focus on coming out to Sam Rayburn with a chip on my shoulder to earn my way into the top.
That's awesome, man.
That's my plan. So, but outside of that, everything's just going to be at home. I got local events, mostly out of the bass boat, chasing that side, and then we'll cross the bridge on what is 2024 after I get through October, because I have dreams of moving to bigger circuits, and I want to see the kayak industry evolve. I really do. But I've always had a dream of fishing on the Elite Series. And, I'm not getting to the Elite Series fishing out of kayak consistently.
Nope.
So I've got to ask myself some hard questions about what is the next step on my journey, and how do I want to make that next step?
Right.
Let's chase NPFL, switch over to MLF, and try to earn my way up that direction, or to commit to the 9 opens, or what is it that I want to do? Because there's huge financial obligations and investments. But right now,
big.
It's getting into the Hobie talk, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect, man. Well, listen, I know you well enough to this point. I've fished with you and seen you out there, and you and I have broken bread together. If you're going into Rayburn with that much focus and, like you said, a chip on your shoulder, I would advise no one to bet against you. I like your chances, brother. When you get your head down and you get to work, man, you do some awesome stuff out there. So just trust yourself, trust what you do, because it's fun to watch out here. I'll tell you that.
So, and then before I close, if you don't mind, I want to thank 5x3. 5x3 has been with me every step of the way. They've been amazing to me. And then, you've got Trocar. Trocar is somebody that's new for you for helping pay the bills. I told a buddy of mine earlier today, I said I have 250 packs of Trocar hooks sitting in my garage. Live, die, swear by them. And so, look, it's Trocar or bust. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not on pro staff with them. All that money's come out of my own pocket. But it's Trocar or bust. A Trocar Pro V with a 5/0 is probably my bread and butter.
That Pro V, man, when I got a chance to actually experience that and utilize it, it was a game changer for me. I had left some other brands that we won't mention, and when Eric Ali, who is the guy in charge there at Eagle Claw, Eric Ali. He's the guy that extended the offer to us and got us on board there, and yeah, man, he showed me some product there that just it's no question why we've loved them and used them so much. And just knowing the history of the company, man, that's a huge deal. But yeah, I'm betting that we could probably, me, man, I'll open the door in communication, and who knows where they're at. They would love to find a Georgia angler that I'm sure that they could, work with, especially a guy like you that's represents as well. That we said this before, you understand what it is to be a professional in this field, regardless of what you're fishing out of, and so that's a huge deal for Eagle Claw. That means everything to them is the Reddit, what's at the heart, of what they're doing out there. So
I appreciate that, man. You're a kind gentleman. I appreciate that so much. And thank you for having me on the show tonight. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to the next opportunity.
You bet, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on here. Folks, don't forget, smash that subscribe button. I know I say that a lot, but I'll tell you what, we need more subscriptions at the YouTube channel. So anything you folks can do for us out there to help share that across YouTube, across Facebook there, with the True Patriot Outfitters, that's a massive, massive help, and it helps our mission with the True Patriot Outfitters and Romans Warrior Foundation. As always, folks, tie lines and be safe.
Call up.